welcome to the B2B Growth Blueprint Podcast, where we talk with entrepreneurs, founders, and leaders at B2B services, tech, and SaaS companies to learn the systems and processes they've used to create success for their business. We'll also learn from marketing and sales experts to provide insights to help you grow your business. I'm your host, Mark Osborne, and the podcast is brought to you by Modern Revenue Strategies and their 10x ROI B2B Growth Guarantee. Schedule a free diagnostic call to learn the fastest path to double your B2B revenues in just 90 days. Hello, and welcome to another episode of the B2B Growth Blueprint Podcast. I'm your host, Mark Osborne, and today I'm very excited to welcome my guest, Jon Chen. Now, Jon is a leadership team coach and strategist that partners with stuck, frustrated, or overwhelmed CEOs and executive directors to unlock the potential of their organizations from idea to exit. Jon combines 25 plus years as a strategy consultant and his experience as a six-time entrepreneur with the only holistic approach that drives sustainable growth. And we'll talk about what that approach is. He helps the C-suite create a clear and galvanizing strategic plan, align and execute as a high-performing team, and craft the organization's soul to drive the greatest competitive advantage. As a certified exit planner, he also partners with business owners to strategically align their personal life and financial goals with the growth of their business to optimize their exit. So, Jon, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Mark, for having me.
Yeah, I've really been looking forward to this conversation, from our previous dialogues and all those things. So you've done a lot of really interesting things and you've got a really unique perspective. Why don't you tell us a little bit of your story of kind of how you got here?
Sure. Well, I guess I started my career in a consulting firm. When I joined, there were 600 people, and I just I had an entrepreneurial bent out of college, and I joined this company, and we were early in the dot-com ages. The company built the first eTrade.com, built the first United Airlines.com, but I built the first online insurance agency. So it was very early in that internet age. And I learned a ton at that company about building businesses. I helped launch multiple businesses, operations, and helped companies scale over a period of 10 years there. And when I left, it was about 10,000 people. But what I learned the most at that place was the importance of building the culture of an organization. The company won awards for its culture. Harvard Business Review did a case study on its culture. And I just learned a ton about how important it was to align people and create passion and energy around that. I later went on to some other high growth tech companies, and then actually left to help scale a stuck digital health company. And I helped grow that from about $4 or $5 million digital health consulting company to over about 15 before I left, and continued to work on a number of startups. Like you mentioned, I've got 6 startups under my belt, but kind of realized that what I really love to do is helping people bring visions to life, figure out where you want to go, bring it to life. I'm a catalyst. I help people achieve that audacious vision, but I'm also the one at this point in time in my life to continue to run a business long term. And I just love helping people succeed and bring their visions to life. So now I spend my time coaching founders, entrepreneurs, nonprofit execs to how to really unlock the value of what they're trying to create in their organization through a combination of my experience, holistic approach that you talked about, and just my experience.
Awesome. So I always love, people that are experts in taking a squishy topic and turning it into something that is real and sort of bankable. And I love, you've talked about, how, sort of culture is a real differentiator and a real lever for success. But I think a lot of people have kind of differing views on what does it mean to build corporate culture, or what's the real benefit? What is it? How does it show up within the business? And as an expert in the space, I'd love to get, sort of your expert definition of what is culture in an organization. And, let's think about not the 10,000, person corporation, but, sort of these $5-10 million companies that have got, 10, 100 employees that are working there. What does culture look like there, and how does it impact their business?
Sure, great question. So I guess a couple of things. One, as we've kind of talked about, I've leveraged a system or an approach called System and Soul. which focuses much on the system of those small companies. And a lot of people in that space where you started to launch a business, a lot of your listeners, right? You've launched a business, you've got this better mousetrap, and you've launched it to market, but get to a point where you're not scaling. People bring in systems, right? Processes, get people organized, which is great and really important. And there are a lot of great frameworks for that. However, if you only focus on the system, after a while, you get real good control, but people start to feel like cogs in the wheel. They start to get frustrated, and you start to see people leave, and HR complaints increase, right? And what you really need to do is focus on both. So I bring an approach that focuses on both. We talked about system and the soul of the company. And so I think, maybe an analogy that I often use, what does it mean for a soul of a company, right? Is a soccer analogy, right? You see my little soccer ball that I'm holding here. If you have little kids, or your listeners have little kids, you remember when they play soccer at 3-4 years old, they play what I call swarm soccer, right? The whistle blows, they swarm the ball, and they spend the entire game in a giant mob chasing the ball around. You got kids in the corner screaming, you got kids playing with dandelions, you got kids going the wrong way. Well, a lot of these companies, $5-10 million companies who don't have system and structure in place, the same thing. They swarm from fire to fire, crisis to crisis, got to close that deal, got to close that funding deal, and it's chaos. And frankly, I've seen it at a $20 billion company before too.
Sure.
But it's pretty typical of many companies. In order for that soccer team to grow up and win, and maybe win a championship or win a World Cup, what do they need? They need systems, right? They need to know positions, plays, roles, responsibilities, but you also need like metrics beyond just winning and losing or scoring goals. What are my personal metrics as a goalie? How many have I blocked? How many have I let through? What's my metrics as a defense? What's my metrics in offense? You need all those things. And those are great, right? The systems are great. But if you've watched any Kevin Costner sports movie or Miracle on Ice or Ted Lasso, like what wins is soul, right? And so I define like culture is actually a piece of the soul of the organization. A lot of people think that culture is good food, ping pong tables, slides, or even just some values on the wall, right? Core values on the wall, core values are defined. I define core values differently than culture. Values are the people you want to hire. What are the things and the behaviors you want from individuals? Culture is what happens all those people come together. And it's an environment where people go to live or die. So it's what you want people saying about you on Glassdoor, right? About what it's like to work there, the group together, or it's what you want people telling their friends about what it's like to work there. So what is important is not just that culture. It's not just finding the right people, just the culture. What important is creating an environment that brings the humanity alive in the company. Because statistics do show over and over again that companies that bring that soul, as I call it, to life, win. And that's the greatest competitive advantage any company can have. So for example, it's a place where people feel the culture is important, or the culture is good, because McKinsey has shown over and over again the best performing cultures outperform the bottom tier. Studies show by over 200% financially, right? Companies where people feel empowered are 87% more likely to innovate. Companies where people feel engaged and feel meaning in their work are actually 80% more likely, actually have an 80% higher EPS, right, in public companies. So there's all these components that I work with in my clients to create that soul. It's actually not very hard, but you have to be deliberate about it. You have to define it. You put a strategy together for it, and then you create that and you can transform your organization. Wow. Sorry, that was a long diatribe there.
Oh, no. I mean, that's exactly what I was looking for. And I love the way that you're able to sort of couch the actual benefits that people get. And I think the thing that makes it even sort of more exciting is at the end of the day, like, isn't that where we all want to work? Like, we want to work at companies that have where you feel empowered to innovate, where you feel inspired to, sort of do your best work and all of those things, rather than just being a cog on the wheel. I will wager, and I'm curious your opinion on this too, though, is I bet without processes, it's pretty hard to have culture, because you are all just kind of swarming from, sort of emergency to emergency. Whereas if you've got processes, it creates the framework that you can start to create some culture, or a culture that isn't crisis, and in like a positive culture. Like, can you kind of do them separately, or are they pretty inextricably linked?
I think they're linked, if I'm understanding the question correctly, right? Like
Yeah.
the system, you need a system to create the culture, right?
Yeah.
And the culture makes the system actually important, relevant. That's one way we like to say it. So they feed into each other and they're integrated in my approach,
Hmm.
right? Um, Everything we do comes back to end of the day, people, right? So let me
Wow.
give you an example, right? Um, a lot of people do quarterly one-on-ones, right? Quarterly one-on-ones to check point on people performance reviews. And the most of the time when you look at performance reviews, they're organized around what goals have you done for the company,
Yeah.
right? What have you done for the company? There's important. Like here's your KPIs. What have you done for the company? Are you successful or not? But that philosophy is really about what have you done for the company lately versus what have you done, what has the company done for you lately? And I like to say I like to work with companies that are looking to use the company to grow people. And then you do that, you actually grow the company. It's just a virtuous cycle. So an example when I work with my clients and I teach them to do the one-on-ones, it's about, okay, what are your goals? What are your passions? What are your strengths? What's your mission in life? And how does that tie back into a role in the company and how are you helping the company? And so there are systems that you typically have, right? But it's actually more people focused and more about the company again, because if you do that, you drive the greatest competitive advantage.
Yeah, that's so interesting. Well, and one of the things that we always say when we work with folks is you create systems that enable like collaboration because so many companies
Right.
sort of value collaboration, and we see systems as a way that it turns it less from a well, you did it wrong to more like the system let us both down, and then you can
Mhm.
collaborate on that. But I guess even if you've got the system, you have to sort of value the collaboration to come around it and to make those improvements, which is really interesting.
Right. I mean, it's collaboration. It's creating a safe place to collaborate where there is, as you've probably heard a lot of talk about psychological safety
Right.
and where people are actually playing to their strengths. And in innovation work, people have different strengths and how you leveraging their strengths. There's a whole bunch of tools and frameworks to think about like better collaboration and bring people out in areas that they love and shine.
That's really interesting. Well, and it's also interesting, we talked a little bit in your bio about how, you also do this exit planning and you and I have talked about in the past that, that what's the old phrase, the best time to plant a tree is 20 years ago, the second best
Right.
time is
Exactly.
today. And so like, the best time to begin planning your exit was 5 years ago, the second best time is today. How does the sort of bringing the culture and systems together today help with exit planning in the future?
Right. So let's talk about what most people think exit planning is. And this is the way I understood it before I kind of learned more about it, right? It's like putting a house on the market. You putting it up and you get it ready to sell, a few months before you're ready to sell.
Sure.
The problem is that 80% of those businesses that go on market don't sell because they're not ready to
80%.
sell.
So
80%.
80% of businesses that someone is like, I've built this business my whole career, my lifetime, all my value that I think I'm going to retire on when I sell it. 80% of the time they don't sell.
80% of the time they don't sell
Wow.
because they're not ready to sell. They don't get the value they thought they heard because they got some value number from their friends at the golf club, right? Or wherever else they're hanging out and getting their information. And they're just not ready to. Sometimes they get cold feet and they're not ready to sell. Now, 75% of those who actually do sell regret it because all of a sudden they discover, yeah, like they didn't enjoy playing golf that much and their spouse got tired of them being at home, or they just lost a sense of purpose and meaning. So
So
what you really have to do is start thinking.
that means only
Go ahead.
about 10% of people that sell their business are like have a good exit and are happy about it.
Yeah. So my work as an exit planner is to help people think about that today and build a plan to get to what you want to achieve, both from a personal perspective. What do you want to do? Let's find meaning because let's help you transition there when the time comes. But what is the financial need you have at that point in time, right? Typically, you want to think about 4% of your assets. You want to live off 4% of your assets. Okay, great. So if you want to live off $400,000 a year, you need $10 million. Is your business actually worth that much? People kind of
Right.
go, I think it's worth that much, and they have no idea. What I help
Right.
them do is understand what the range of value could be for the company, right? And then how do you get the maximum amount, right? And so that's where my work in terms of coaching and business growth coaching comes in, is how to get to that maximum value, right? What are the areas we need to work on to improve? And how do we grow the business? How do we create the right culture where you're going to get even better value, the right soul of the company, get even better value out of your company so you can actually get the money that you think you need in 5 years? Because if you don't start planning for it now and you wait till then, it's too late.
That's
right? It
right.
takes 3 to 5 years typically to really transform a company to where you want it to be. And if you wait to start that too late, it's like you said, it's too late to do it. So exit planning actually starts now, today, to get your personal goals lined up, your financial goals lined up, your tax planning, right? Your tax strategy, that stuff takes a while too. And then let's build the value of the business. And that's where I primarily work, but I act as sort of a quarterback for the entire team of financial planners and lawyers and everything else that's required to help succeed and achieve your goals.
That's interesting. So I'm gonna get a couple sort of nuggets of wisdom out of you since you've got such a great perspective. And the first we'll stick with this sort of idea of exit planning. So, for that entrepreneur operator today that, is deep in their business, maybe even they're working on their business some instead of just in it. What's the one thing they should start doing today that'll get them, in a better place for having a more successful exit?
Um, I think figure out where you want to go. Like
Yeah.
start with the end, right? Where do you
Start.
want to be, and then figure out where the gap is. And that's going
Uh,
to be a business gap in terms of the value and what you're creating and your earnings. Get something to really give you a good sense of what your business is worth today. I think too many people have an overinflated sense of what their business is today, and figure out how much you need in the future. But people, there's good, easy, not expensive ways to do a quick valuation, a range of valuation. You don't need
yeah.
to spend a lot of money to do a detailed valuation right now, but at least get a sense where your possible exit is right now, the value of the company, and then start putting a plan together, right? It's possible. You
Right.
got to put a plan together, get a coach to help get you there. And
Awesome.
frankly, I'll say a coach that focuses not only on the systems, but on the soul, because that's going to give you even greater value. Than it's an exponential return, right? You're going to get greater value.
Well, so that leads me to the next sort of nugget of wisdom that I want to get you to share with the audience, which is, for folks that are like, we've got some systems in place, and so we're starting to get that, sort of baseline, but we don't have, the culture that really inspires people to go above and beyond, or where everyone's really sort of thrilled to come to work. What's something they can start to do today that can start to improve that culture, that soul?
Yeah, I mean, there's certainly, I think, what the so I think there's a lot they can do today, but I think you're asking for one thing, right? I would start with the end in mind again, right?
Okay.
You want to engage your team. And as you probably know, 75% of Gen Z cares more about meaning than they do about work. And we have a crisis in this country or in our business world where people are not engaged in work, and people, as you know, are quiet quitting and disengaged. One of the most important things you can do is start to leverage the power of your organization, right? Get people aligned around where you're going. So Jim Collins, you might have heard this quote before, has said that building a visionary company is 1% vision and 99% alignment, right? But Bob Iger, CEO of Disney, says your strategy is only as good as your ability to articulate it. So getting a very clear strategy is very important. And I think start there. And one of the first things you can do is just figure out where you're going as a team, right? A lot of times, almost all companies I go into, they put a vision together, right? Everybody has a vision, but the visions actually don't go anywhere. I kind of analogize it as to a bunch of people sitting in the boat in the middle of the ocean saying, we want to be good rowers, we're going to row fast, and we're going to get this time, but they don't have a destination. They're not going anywhere. So what I work with all my clients is to create what I call a destination. Where are you going? By when? And why does it matter? Right.
Right.
So the classic example I give often is JFK saying, we want to put a man on the moon by the end of the decade. Right. In the 60s, he said that. And he put a stake in the ground. It's clear when you get there, it's visual. You know you're going to reach it. Right. And it's inspiring. Studies show that when people have something that stretches them, a destination that actually stretches them and inspires them, you actually get more done than when you don't have one. Right. So get a clear sense of where you're going. The other piece that I really work with my clients on is like, why does it matter? Right. A lot of times people put a vision together and say, well, because I want to exit in 5 years, or I want to be $100 million company. Well, your employees don't give a shit about your exit, nor do they give a shit about your revenue number, right?
Right.
How do you create something that people are going to be able to engage in? Everybody from the lowest level employee to your customers. So as an example, JFK, there's a story of JFK walking around NASA saying to a janitor, what are you doing? And he says, I'm putting a man on the moon. He could connect his work to the greater vision, right? And the other thing I forgot to mention earlier just now is that, like, when you put that stake in the ground, if you ask a NASA astronaut, like, when are we going to get to the moon? They probably would have said 2025, and we probably still wouldn't be there.
Right.
But because JFK put that stake in the ground, it created momentum, opened up our imagination. We created technologies and inventions that we are still benefiting from today, right? So if you want to achieve the most out of your people, one of the first things is just figure out where you're going, right? And so I'll just give you an example, right, of one of my clients here, and I, I guess I'll read it, right? Or should I show it? Probably show it.
Sure. Yeah. Give us a little visual aid there.
So I'll give you an example here of one of my clients, right? This is their vision. Our vision is to create, execute, and build and expand fun, unique food concepts in the Boston area and beyond via our dynamic, organized, and highly tactical craft casual restaurant group. We want to be recognized by our guests and critics as the ideal brand and destination to get the best style of food we're serving, phenomenal guest service, and experience worth sharing.
So this sounds like what you would see on the wall at a lot of places that make breakfast food.
Right. Do you even know? Yeah, somebody else thought it was a dinner restaurant. I don't think you can even tell.
Well, yeah, I only
what
know it
this
says
is.
breakfast because I think it said breakfast specifically, right?
It doesn't say. I think I told you earlier. Yeah. So,
Okay. Okay.
but it's long. It's wordy. Nobody get behind it. It doesn't, like, this is a vision. It's aspirational, but you're actually don't know when you're going to get there. And how do you get there? How do you measure?
Right.
How do you measure it? And it's just hard to digest. So we work in what I created. I work with them to create what we call a destination statement. This is the destination statement. We're going to put 10 million smiles on people's faces by 2029 because breakfast can make or break your day. So the important part here, yes, the 10 million smiles is good, but the idea of a deeper purpose and meaning, breakfast can make or break your day, that everybody can align with, right? People still make their decisions based upon beliefs, right? We think we make rational decisions, but we're actually still making decisions based on the most primitive part of the brain: fight or flight. Can I trust this person or not? So another example I have from one of my clients was a landscaping company. He said, I want to transform 1,000 lawns by the end of the decade because I got the best people, got the best tools, got the best equipment, got the best prices. I've been doing this a long time. The customers kind of really don't care, right?
Right.
It's what I call feature puking. So after working with him, his revision was, we're going to transform 1,000 lawns by the end of the decade because outdoor spaces are where people connect. So all of a sudden you've got something again that has meaning to everybody. So I think the easiest thing is spend some time really thinking about what is your why and where you're going. That's inspirational. That's going to stretch you 20%, a little bit. And what is that deeper meaning, purpose, and impact of what you do? Everybody can find one of those. Every company I've worked with can find one of those. Like, how are you making the world a better place? And focus on the impact you are making to humanity, not yourself. And that will engage your people, and people get excited behind it. And that's one of the first steps.
That's so inspiring, and like the moving from that, long mouthful of, yeah, we make food in the Boston area, to we're gonna put 10 million smiles on people's faces because breakfast can make or break your day, is like that's a reason to get up early and go in and make the breakfast because you're making or breaking someone's day.
Right.
Versus I'm helping my boss, have another yacht to ski behind.
Exactly.
It's such a different thing. So you paint such a great vision with, a lot of facts and statistics on the value of building the soul, building this culture within an organization. And I love that it's grounded with the systems and the processes that ensure the success. For the folks that have been listening and they're like, I need some of this. I want some of this in my business. Give us the pitch a little bit. Like, how do you work with folks? How do you engage? What should they do?
I mean, certainly I'm open for any of your, listeners to give me a call, right? Just drop me an email, reach out to me at, info@bluetidecatalyst.com. I don't know if you're going to present
Yeah, I'll have that in the show notes.
yeah, they can email me to John or info. Drop me an email. I'm glad, or schedule an appointment with me. It's on my website. I'm glad to sit down and talk with for half an hour about where you're at. I mean, it starts really with an understanding where you're at, what you need, what your problems are, and I can figure out how I can help you. Typically, I work with people by starting off by just clarifying that destination, right? And then it's coaching with them on an ongoing basis to help them transform their organization. It takes time to develop the new habits, to transform, to align people. I typically really only work with leadership teams, right? Because part of it is about helping that founder pass the bus test, right? Or pass the sell test, right? Like you cannot, like most of your whole podcast is about people who are moving from running the company on their own to building a team to delegating. And so that's a lot of my work too, but more not on the revenue side, but on the scale, the growth, the strategy side. So helping them put together that cross-functional leadership team that's sharing the responsibility will help them grow. And how do you think about succession planning for when you do want to leave or if you don't pass the bus test? So I'm working with that leadership team to figure out where you're going, your strategy, right? What kind of culture you want to build, things we've talked about, where you're going. And then all along the way, I'm doing leadership development with them, right? So today I worked with a client and we're just working on actually how to do those one-on-ones we talked about earlier, right? Or I'll work with them on what leadership really looks like. So all along the way, I'm helping develop leadership and skills for them to be able to run the company themselves. I don't know if that answered your question.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Jon, you've been such a font of wisdom and shared so much knowledge with us today. So thanks so much for joining the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right, we'll talk to you soon.
Take care. Bye.
Thank you for joining this episode of the B2B Growth Blueprint Podcast. We hope you've gained insights to grow your business. If you enjoyed this discussion, please rate, comment, like on your favorite platform, and share to others who will find it useful. Do you know a CEO, founder, or leader at an early stage B2B services, tech, or SaaS company who would like to be a guest and share their story? Send us a note. Let's schedule a conversation.